Good evening. It's Friday. It's St. Patrick's Day, the 17th. Welcome to the podcast. Again, I'm by myself. Tyler's a bum. He's a beach bum. He's coming back tomorrow, so he'll be back next week. For now, it's going to be me again. Hopefully, you didn't hate last week's podcast if you're watching again. And if you aren't watching, you probably hated last week's podcast, so that's why you're not here. But if you do like the podcast, as always, please subscribe to the channel. Join me because I'm by myself. Obviously, join me in the live chat. I usually will get to every live chat, but because I'm doing everything by myself, it's a little bit hard to get to the live chat or see the live chat in time. Sometimes you'll make a comment, as you maybe if you've watched last week's podcast, you'll see that people were making comments, and then I wasn't getting to them until we're on the next topic. But whatever. Too bad. That's what you get. We're not a very polished operation over here, but we do like to interact with the audience. So please do comment because I don't have Tyler to bounce stuff off of. So I need you. So otherwise, it's just me talking to you, and I've heard myself talking. It's irritating. So, but again, thanks for coming. I got a few things to talk about today. There's some big news in the financial sector. Some banks are really hitting the shit right now, I think. SVB started the whole jazz off, but now it looks like there's a European bank. I can't remember the name of it. Some Swiss bank that was having some issues this week, and now a couple other banks maybe the same sort of thing. The problem with something like this is when you see one bank take a hit like this, people start to react and they freak out a little, and they start to it snowballs, right? So you start getting other financial institutions that start to run the same runoffs that SVB ran into. But some good news on that front we'll talk about a little bit. Also, we're going to talk about the Bitcoin run and cryptocurrencies in general. Just last year was pretty bad on the crypto sphere, but this year to date looks pretty good. So if you are in that crypto space, which I am a little bit, you'll enjoy some of the stuff we're going to talk about with that. We're going to rehash a little bit of the Trump DeSantis feud. Trump is just relentless on this thing, which is kind of funny. But we'll talk a little bit about that. Tucker Carlson also did he did a funny thing where he sent out questions about the Ukraine war to Republican candidates. So we'll discuss that. The CBC, because we are in Canada here. Many of you that watch are from the States, so you may not know. But we are in Canada, so we will talk about the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation and some of the goofiness with that organization. Colin Kaepernick, a guy who always wants to be in our lives and doesn't seem to want to play football, but he wants to talk about everything but football. We'll talk a little bit about what he's up to and him outing his parents. And then I got a little thing to end the podcast, a funny little clip that I missed actually on the Russell Brand thing. So I'll play that, and I got a good chuckle out of it. Hopefully you will too. So without further ado, let me just set up here since I'm just talking my ass off here and get this going. The first thing here. Okay, so I got a couple articles on the SVB financial collapse, meltdown, whatever you want to call it. I'll discuss the first thing. This one's a Reuters article. I'm not going to go too much into these articles because, again, I don't want to just read off a bunch of shit to you. But here's a little bit of some of the developments here. So, the ratings agency Moody's was their outlook on the banking system was pretty bad last week, but apparently they've now gone from negative to stable, so that's a good thing. Republican chairman of the House Financial Services Committee urged confidence in U.S. banking system and said Federal Reserve and regulatory FDIC had acted swiftly and boldly. The FDIC actually did a pretty unprecedented thing. I don't know if I agree with it, but I mean, I get the sentiment. So they actually insured all of the accounts from the SVB bank. So in other words, the FDIC only will cover up to $250,000 for any account at any bank, and something like 90% of the accounts at SVB, because they were small businesses and things like that, um, they were over that 250,000 threshold. So the FDIC, in order to sustain or to I guess to give confidence back to the public, so they wouldn't go nuts on the banking industry, uh, they actually said that they were going to go ahead and insure everything, which is, again, like I said, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I understand the reasoning, the sentiment behind it. But that's good news as far as other banks, um, you know, maybe not overreacting or panicking and doing a lot of sell-offs like SVB did, trying to generate capital to cover all of their withdrawals. Um, okay, again, okay. So here's here's something that happened as well, that it's just blood in the water, right? So we've got this bank that's failing. Suddenly, Apollo Global Management, Blackstone, and KKR and Co. They expressed interest to buy some of the loans, some of the book of loans held by SVP. So obviously, they're going to cherry pick and what they like and what they see in there. That's good loans, things that aren't so volatile, essential, or in risk of defaulting. Um, and again, this is like the sharks in the water. It's like you get these big companies that see a company falling apart, they go in there, swoop in, and start buying up, whatever's good. Um, you can make an argument, which I would kind of make an argument, that things like this could be contrived. You could have these big organizations, these big ruling class uh, conglomerates or companies coming in and you know creating this crisis, and then you know sifting through the ashes, if you will, and taking what they can. So uh, again, I don't like to be a conspiracy theorist on this kind of stuff, but realistically, we live in the world of conspiracy theories at this point because we don't get any kind of real information. So I would say probably it's likely that something like that is taking place, or at the very least, like they always do, they're just making the best out of a bad situation. So, um, and another thing that's going on with this, that's a little dangerous, but again, it's almost like I can see why. Let me see if it's this article that says it. I think it might be the other. Actually, the other article I have here. This Forbes article I have here. Um, Talks about the other banks coming in, and they're actually some of the big banks like Wells Fargo, Citibank. What's another one here? J.P. Morgan Chase. They're all going to provide like $5 billion of uninsured deposits to another bank that's having an issue, First Republic. So here's a couple. There's a criticism of it. I'll read this. So some investors, however, harshly criticize the $30 billion rescue. That's 6 different banks committing $5 billion. For the First Republic, arguing it instills a false sense of confidence in the market and deepens the risk of contagion. In a scathing tweet, billionaire Bill Ackman, the head of major hedge fund Pershing Squire, argued the banks would risk spreading First Republic's default risk to bigger banks by providing uninsured deposits, saying he is extremely concerned about contagion spiraling out of control and causing severe economic damage. In a joint statement, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who's a tool, uh, and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, another tool, called the massive cash infusion a most welcome show of support. Of course they did. Okay, I won't read that. Let's see here. Oh, okay. So actually, I'll read these two things. So, in response to the collapse of SVB and Signature Bank, the second and third largest in U.S. history, Senator Elizabeth Warren, cool, uh, and Representative Katie Porter proposed a bill Wednesday seeking to reintroduce regulations on small, medium-sized banks, initially implemented in the 2010 Dodd-Frank Act in response to the 2008 Great Recession. Oh, I love how they're calling that a Great Recession now. But the bill, which would create restrictions, including regular stress tests that had been eliminated in 2018, faces steep opposition from congressional Republicans, including Senator Tim Scott, who argued increased regulation wouldn't prevent banks from relying on federal government to swoop in after taking excessive risks. I don't know. This is all from Forbes, so it's got a left-leaning perspective. So take it with a grain of salt. I just read it from Forbes because Forbes is a little bit more of a uh, maybe a little bit more of a centrist outlet than some of the other ones. The Federal Reserve will have an opportunity to raise interest rates when it meets again next Tuesday and Wednesday. Fed Chair Jerome Powell had told the Senate Banking Committee last week, before the collapse of SVB and Signature Bank, that the central bank could introduce a higher interest rate hike, though analysis at Goldman Sachs predict the recent developments in the banking system to persuade the Fed against raising rates. I don't think they should raise rates, but I'm not an economical analyst. I just spent a bit of time in my life as a financial advisor. That doesn't mean shit. Uh, I just think at this point now, you'd kind of be, I don't know. I, th- I think you might just be throwing some fuel in the fire in that case. But I think at this point, it's more about, I like what the FDIC did as far as trying to get confidence back in the public. But I just think you need a good solid word from the government to tell you, look, we've got this in hand, and we're not, your money's safe. Because realistically, that's the most important thing to anybody, really, is their money, family money, maybe God, whatever. Uh, but one thing I also like that's happening, I mean, I'll take this with a grain of salt and until I actually see something happen. But apparently, Biden says that they're going to go after some of these execs. Because with SVB, what happened with them is in April of 2022, they actually let go of their chief risk analyst or chief risk officer, something like that. Basically, the person in charge of any taking on or looking at the risk of potential loans, where any of their assets or capital is going, all that kind of thing. So apparently, they did not have a risk an analysis officer for 8 months, maybe 10 months, even whatever, from April on. That's a problem when you got a bank that's got whatever $200 billion of assets, that they're looking after. That's a problem. So yeah, somebody should be charged for this. But again, I don't really remember anybody in 2008 getting charged for that whole debacle. So this just could be some posturing by Biden to kind of to say he's going to do something, but not really going to do anything at all. Yeah, I mean, we'll see this week what's going to happen. I think a lot of the hot fire of this is kind of starting to subside a little bit. As with anything like this, it blows up very quickly and then it starts to settle down a little bit. It'll really depend on what they do with those interest rate hikes. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so nobody's commented yet, so I have nothing to talk about with that. So I'm just going to move on to the next thing, because realistically, that's pretty boring anyway. So, okay, so Bitcoin. If you hold Bitcoin or you intend on buying Bitcoin, you probably like what's happening right now with Bitcoin. It's up to roughly, I think it's about 27,000 right now, value. Last year was pretty bad for Bitcoin, and I think the years prior to this year, I think you really saw Bitcoin and a lot of cryptos really tied in with the market, which made people really nervous, myself included, that perhaps it wasn't as decentralized as we wanted it or expected it to be. But now with all these this bank collapse looming on us, you see it kind of going the opposite direction. So hey, maybe I got to eat craw a little bit on this one. That maybe it's a little more decentralized than I had originally thought. So let me pull up. I got a small article about this. This is from BNN Bloomberg. Whatever. I don't really do much or look at much from them. But here we go. So I'll go through this a little bit. It says Bitcoin believers revel in "told you so" moment. Yeah, of course they do. Okay, as members of the media lingered near the entrance of the headquarters of Silicon Valley Bank this week, a Bitcoin true believer seized on an opportunity. Okay, so very quickly, apparently some guy rented a truck and said, "Be your own bank." He was promoting Bitcoin. So following an epically awful 12 months for the cryptocurrency industry, Bitcoin evangelists are having a moment. Not to mention a huge rally in their favorite coin, which has soared more than 30% in the past 7 days. Pretty big. As the original white paper proposing Bitcoin put it, in the wake of the global financial crisis, the traditional system works well most of the time, yet it still suffers from the inherent weaknesses of the trust-based model. I don't want to go into this whole article. It's kind of stupid. It's kind of like it's just, it's fluff essentially on this. It doesn't go much into why or any of that kind of thing. Um, but let me see. I think at the end here, I read this quick. At the end here, okay. Our current broken financial system is Bitcoin's best marketing, and the Fed is at its ad agency. Uh, an anonymous artist told Bloomberg. So I think, yeah, I think if you're kind of looking for an alternative right now, um, because realistically, where do you put your money right now with everything the way it is? I mean, the banks are scary, obviously. Stock market's pretty scary. There's market manipulation like crazy going on all the time. What do you trust? So I actually know people personally that are taking their money out and just kind of like just holding on to it, and not doing anything with it. I don't necessarily think that's a great approach either. I think when the market's down, you should be buying. Um, but it really depends on what you think the long-term strength and recoverability of the market is. And if you really think that the market itself is broken, which I don't know, it's like for me, it's kind of like the end of the world, doomsday sayers. There's always a new one in the horizon. But if you look cyclically, with the market at least, there was always a crash. There was always something. It's almost as if it's like every 10 years roughly. You had the 2000 plus, then you had 2008. We've had a little bit of a stretch since then. I mean, if you want to drop COVID into that, it kind of, it was an artificial destruction of the market. But you know, let's even just say 2020. So you got 12 years, you had 8 years. Prior to that, I don't even know what the one before that was, probably sometime in the late 80s, I'm guessing. But it's cyclical as far as when these sort of collapses, whether they're giant or giant to one sector happen. So I don't think it's the end of the world as we know it, but this could bring on CBDCs, which are centralized bank digital currencies. China already does something to that effect. I'm not exactly sure how widespread it is in China at this point. I know that there was a whole province that was sort of using it, and they've been using it for quite a little while. These get scary because the idea that you have a digital coin that is is now being used as currency takes away any kind of control that you might have as an individual purchaser, as an individual person in general. Just you have a coin that can be literally shut off by the government, or they can manipulate it in different ways to make you spend it. If they don't want you to save, they want to drive the market, or they want to drive the economy in some way. They'll just say, hey, look, these coins are going to expire, or they're going to devalue over a time period, or maybe you don't share the proper ideologies of your government, and uh, and you protest, or you do these kinds of things like we've seen with some of the COVID restriction protests, and they decide they're going to just shut your money down. We saw that with bank accounts, where they're freezing bank accounts or stopping GoFundMe pages for truckers here in Canada when they were doing that trucker convoy. So there's a lot of scary stuff that can happen with that kind of thing. I know a lot of people might be okay with something like that because they have a trust for the government, but I think anybody in the know that understands that um, you know that trust that you might have now can very easily be turned, depending on whatever way the wind blows as far as what the government wants to do. For example, lockdowns, things like that. So I personally just prefer control over any of that kind of thing. So yeah, you know what? I'll end it on that as far as the Bitcoin cryptocurrency thing, because I was hoping to have Art here with me today, because we've done a cryptocurrency podcast about a year ago or so, and he's kind of like my resident expert on that uh, that in that field, I should say. So I'm just I know a little bit, but not enough to really get into it too much. So let's just move on to the next thing I want to talk about here. Uh, Trump is at it. but he's continuously at it. He's not even just at it again. He's got a real hard on for DeSantis, and I mean, I get why. Obviously, he's DeSantis is his number one. Is going to be his number one rival at this point. I don't see anybody else really um, moving up to the top. It'll be between him and DeSantis, and then most likely he's going to get the knob. So I have one article on this that I will pull up here. Again, sorry about I got to do everything myself. Okay. So Trump lashes out at DeSantis, says he regrets his endorsement of him. uh, yeah, I don't know what to think about that. Like I said, I've said this before. I like Trump. I like Trump for certain reasons. I dislike him for other reasons. I'm kind of like a centrist on Trump, which is kind of a funny thing. At first, I hated him. Not like hated him. I hated him for president, and then I thought he kind of proved himself all right. So I came more and more on Trump camp. So I'll read a little bit of this, and we'll kind of discuss. So former President Donald Trump is intensifying his attacks on Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, calling him disloyal and saying that his political career would have been over had he not endorsed his ultimately successful 2018 campaign. He was a dead dog, or he was dead as a dog. He was a dead politician. He would have been working perhaps for a law firm or doing something else, Trump told a small group of reporters aboard a plane on Monday afternoon en route to Iowa, where he was to make an appearance that evening. Asked if he regretted endorsing DeSantis for governor in 2018, Trump responded, "Yeah, maybe. This guy was dead. He was dead as a doornail. I might say that." Trump spent nearly 10 minutes going after DeSantis, who is uh, widely viewed as his most formidable challenger for the Republican nomination. Okay, let's just carry on a little bit here. I said, "You are so dead right now. You are not going. No endorsement is going to save you. George Washington, George Washington won't save you." And now he's saying that DeSantis said back to him, "I'm telling you, if you endorse me, I have a chance." Trump said he eventually decided to support DeSantis because he defended him while he was facing a Democratic-led impeachment into allegations that he pressured Ukrainian leader Zelensky into investigating Joe Biden's family. That's the thing about Trump. You know, I like that about him, but I also it's like a double-edged sword with him. If you're loyal to Trump, he's loyal to you, but if you turn on him, he's super quick to turn. Which I get it in life. I mean, I'm probably the same realistically, but in politics, I think you got to kind of understand that there's like this, there's fair play, I suppose. It's you know, there's dirty politics, and then there's kind of like we say these kinds of things in jest and in the idea that we're going to just bolster ourselves and destroy you. Now, I don't know if that still works. Um, I don't know if we're getting tired of this kind of thing. This you know, whatever you want to call it, just destroying your candidate politics. Because if you look at just some recent instances, uh, in in some of uh, the races of 2022 um, midterm elections. If you saw some of those, as far as like with what's his face from Pennsylvania, from um, the I can't remember his name. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. The guy with the with head damage. Um, the guy had a stroke. When Dr. Oz was attacking him, he never really went after that. But I mean, he went after him for a lot of stuff, and it didn't seem to matter. People just didn't seem to care that much. And it was the same with like if you look at Trump and Biden. I mean, realistically, Biden should have lost. I mean, he barely showed up for anything. He didn't really even run. He was just kind of like a dead guy, but he still beat Trump. So it's this whole attacking uh, attacking your opponent. I don't think necessarily works the same way as it used to work. I think now it's more about. I think people are getting kind of sick of that, and they want to see just what you have to say about policy and just what you're going to do when you're actually in office. So I don't know if this is going to serve him very well, but um, this is Trump. He doesn't. he doesn't change. He's going to just continue to do this. So here's a little bit. This was kind of funny. Said Trump said in his last he last spoke with DeSantis several months ago. His remarks signal that he was intensely focused on DeSantis, uh, who he conceded was probably his most serious challenger. Behind the scenes, the former president's team has been conducting polling research in order to gauge the governor's weaknesses. There was one attack Trump refused to make, however, calling DeSantis Meatball Ron. That's pretty funny. It had been reported that Trump was workshopping the nickname. He's workshopping the nickname. What do you guys think about this? Meatball Ron. What do you think? Meatball Ron. You like Meatball Ron? You like it? I don't know. I've got one. I don't know if he's. I don't know if that's good or not. We're gonna go with something a little different. That's my Trump impression. Pretty bad, I know. But so yeah, he said it was too rude. But he comes up with this. What was that? What is that? Sanctimonious DeSantis. It's kind of silly. There it is, right here. Remember this: if we weren't for me, Ron DeSanctimonious would right now be working at a law firm or maybe a Pizza Hut. I don't know. Maybe a Pizza Hut. He's gonna go from either a law firm or a Pizza Hut. That makes sense. That would be that's the swing you could see. That's hilarious. Yeah. Again, I don't know. It's fun. This could be fun to watch, but I don't think necessarily this is boding well for Trump long term. I think Trump's popularity is based on the fact that he's Trump and the fact that his you could argue if you want, put it in the comments if you like, that his policies were pretty good. I think he had, I don't think half the stuff that's happening now would have happened under Trump. That's just my personal feel on it. But we'll see, I guess, if he gets the nom and he actually wins a second term, if he's able to, correct all the bullshit that's going on now. So, yeah. So let's say we'll just end it there on that. Again, nobody seems to be commenting, so I don't have anything to say about that. So we'll just move on to the next thing. The next thing I want to talk about, actually, it's relative to that because it goes into it stays in the politics frame of mind. So Tucker Carlson on his show, he reached out to all the Republican candidates for president, and he sent them like this, basically these questions. I think it was like 3 different questions as far as the Ukraine war and their position on that. And it's a 7-minute video, and I don't want to play the whole video. So what I'll do here is I'm going to play part of the video, and then I'll read there's Twitter responses essentially. Tucker posted them all on his Twitter response, which I'll go through and read those. But I'm going to play like Trump's response. I'm reading Trump's response, DeSantis, and there was one more, and I can't remember who. But here we go. First, here's a quick summary. Oh, I should unmute that. That's the problem. I mean, I think that's Trump's biggest heel as far as the establishment goes. They don't like the idea that um, he's not for war. I mean, he's always been that guy that. Oh, I just switched over on something here. He's always been that guy that's been looking to get the U.S. out of these situations and not escalate these situations further. So it's nice to see that his response there. It's nice to see that he was actually. I mean, it's Fox News, so it's a safe space, I think, for Trump for the most part. But it's nice to see that he actually responded to that. Let's see here. Why did I lose this video here? All right. Okay, so we're just going to do Trump's. We're just going to do Trump's video then. I'll read the rest of them here. Um, this one, oh, it's sorry, it's Pence's response. So here's Pence's response. So he's opposing Russia and Ukraine. Oh, get the hell out of here. Is opposing Russia and Ukraine in America's interest. When the United States supports Ukraine in their fight against Putin, we follow the Reagan doctrine and we support those who fight our enemies on their shores. So we will not have to fight them ourselves. There is no room for Putin apologists in the Republican Party. This is not America's war. But if Putin is not stopped and the sovereign nation of Ukraine is not restored quickly, he will continue to move toward our NATO allies, and America would then be called upon to send our own. Okay, yeah. So obviously he's for fighting the war. Here's what DeSantis had to say. And this is the question: what is America's objective in Ukraine? Without question, peace should be the objective. The U.S. should not provide assistance that could require the deployment of American troops or enable Ukraine to engage in offensive operations beyond its borders. F-16s and long-range missiles should therefore be off the table. These moves would risk explicitly drawing the United States into the conflict and drawing us closer to a hot war between the world's two largest nuclear powers. That risk is unacceptable. I second that completely. I don't think I would even add anything to that. I think that's a perfect statement. Here's a guy I'd never even heard of. This is Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't even know who he is, but apparently he's going to be running for president. So here's something. Here's what they asked him. What should be the limit on funding and material? They spelled material with an E. That's hilarious. Generally speaking, I don't think it's wise to telegraph our ends, and I believe the facts in January 2025 may be very different from where they are today. But let me be clear. If I were president right now, I would limit any further funding or support to Ukraine. I don't want to read any more of this. This guy, I don't even know. Whatever. So okay. So at least he's in agreement. Here's what Greg Abbott from Texas has to say about it. President Biden's blank check foreign policy in Ukraine has drawn nothing but ridicule and disdain from our adversaries and has diverted funding from our essential needs in the United States. Throwing money at Ukraine with no accountability or objective is clearly failing. Worse is that President Biden's approach to Ukraine has been at the expense of the underfunding or ignoring priorities at home. Again, so he's for it, obviously, and I agree with that assessment. Realistically, why are you spending money abroad when we've got problems at home? You're going to ignore large spills, train derailments in Ohio, but you're not. You're just going to give a blank check to Ukraine. You can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. This is she's probably one of my favorite. I'm sure people watching this are aware of Governor Kristi Noem of North Dakota. She was awesome during the pandemic and such. So, have U.S. sanctions been effective? The United States has come to rely too heavily on financial sanctions as a weapon of deterrence. Now, nations that hate America are consciously moving away from the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Sanctions against China, Iran, and Russia have bolstered the Russian ruble and enabled China to establish trade in Chinese money rather than in U.S. dollars. That's an interesting point. I would have to say I probably agree with that too. So that's all the ones that he's actually shared. I think there were a number of other ones that he was saying as well, but he didn't actually share them because I don't know why exactly. And then there were a few that didn't respond. So I think Chris Christie was one actually, and who even knew he was still in the run, or like alive, to be honest. I didn't even know he was still a politician, to be honest. But yeah, apparently he's going to be running as well. So it's kind of funny. Again, I'm happy that they actually responded. It shows moxie, especially this early in the race. I mean, to put your position out there boldly like that, I think it's a good thing. I mean, it could hurt you, it could help you. You really don't know yet at this point. You don't really know exactly the climate of what what people are feeling about Ukraine. It's more of a feel at this point. Do we think that people are getting tired of this war, um, or what? But I applaud them for actually responding to Tucker's um, query on those questions. So yeah, uh, well, that's a good place to end on that one. So the next thing I have to talk about is more near and dear to my heart because I'm a Canadian, and it's CBC, and it's quite irritating, to be honest. Okay, so the CBC, sorry, here we go. Okay, so the CBC gave bonuses of, let me see here, 100. Oh, sorry, no, it was. I'm conflating two different things. Sorry, let me just get this up here. Uh, yeah, 156 million since 2015 goes to the CBC. So the CBC, if anybody watching is not aware, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, they're a government-funded uh, outlet here in Canada, and they have been for a long time. That I don't understand why we're funding them. I don't see the point in that in any way. It's kind of like you, you know, it's a it's a what's that called? It's a conflict of interest. I think when you get a what's supposed to be a corporation that provides news and broadcasting in general, but they news is a big thing that they do, and they're being funded by the government. So, do you think they're going to bite that hand that feeds them, or are they just going to report anything that the government wants them to say? That's how I would see it. Uh, I'm going to read this article. It's not all that long, so I'll go through. I'll kind of cherry pick a little bit here. But CBC bonuses and raises cost taxpayers 156 million since 2015, according to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, which obtained the amount through access to information requests. In turn, the CTF is criticizing the federal government for giving the CBC 42 million in the recent fiscal update and pandemic recovery efforts. If the CBC has enough money lying around to hand out millions in bonuses and raises during a pandemic, then taxpayers shouldn't be forced to fork over more money, said Franco Terrazzano, federal director of the CTF, in a statement. The CBC should stop handing out bonuses and raises instead of taking more money from taxpayers. So the CTF says the bonuses to those who received them work out to an average of more than $14,200 per year, while the raises to those who got them work out to an average of more than $1,800 per year. Again, why are we giving raises to a failing broadcast corporation? Very bizarre to me. Obviously, a propaganda arm of the Canadian government, my opinion. So don't strike me for that. Um, and again, like I said, a complete conflict of interest. So the CTF says since the beginning of 2015, the CBC's annual funding from taxpayers has increased by more than 203 million, or 20%, according to its annual reports. And the CBC received more than 1.2 billion from taxpayers in 2021. 1.2 billion for a broadcasting company. Are they not making their own money at all? Probably not. To be honest, if you're watching from the States or anywhere else, um, you probably never even heard of the CBC. They're kind of a joke in Canada, to be honest. They've got some pretty junk shows on there. I don't know. I don't watch cable TV, right? So I don't really even know what they produce anymore. But I know that it was junk back in the day. So um, at this point now, I don't see a point to continuously fund them, and I hope any new government that jumps in will you know maybe defund them a little. If we're talking about defunding police and stuff, let's defund the CBC. And any of my Canadian friends watching, I'm sure you'll agree with that. Okay, so this next one, this is going to be the last of the shitty things to talk about, and I'm going to go into something funny at the end. Um, Colin Kaepernick. I know you were probably hoping you wouldn't hear his name uh, anymore because he's irritating. Um, he's I guess he released a book. Okay, I'm gonna pull up. I'll be honest with you. I didn't do much research on this because I just know that he said some stupid shitty shit about his adoptive parents. Um, it's a CNN article. Colin Kaepernick calls uh, adoptive parents is racism as he promotes a new graphic novel. Yeah, pull this up here. Yeah, this is in this dude's mo. This guy, this guy's just terrible. Okay, let me just read this. I don't think there's not much to it, so I'll read the whole article here. Former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick accuses white adoptive parents of perpetuating racism in their household in an interview with CBS's Adriana Diaz on Thursday. I know my parents love me, but there were still very problematic things that I went through, the 35-year-old said. I think it was important to show that. No, this can happen in your home, and how you move forward collectively while addressing the racism that is being perpetrated or perpetuated, sorry. Kaepernick revealed that when he had cornrows as a child, his mother said, "Your hair is not professional. You look like a little thug." Um, yeah, okay. That might not, maybe you shouldn't say that. Whatever. But I get her the spirit, and you got to realize these are, his mother would be of a different generation when, cornrows weren't as mainstream. She would, the idea of, if she had this idea that she thought he was going to be a professional in some way, maybe, you know, whatever, a lawyer or a doctor or something like that. In her mind, she thought that it probably wasn't going to be all that professional for him to have cornrows. I don't see it as a racist comment. I just think it's more of a maybe ignorant comment. Yeah, you're taking the idea that two white people adopted a biracial baby because he was 6 weeks old, I think, when they adopted him, um, and brought him into their family. They had their own kids. They didn't have to. They could have went for a white kid, I'm sure, if they were racist, and they didn't. So the fact that this has been chump is is doing this to out his parents is uh, it's just it's basically it's this guy's mo. He just uses anything to bolster himself. He's probably upset that he's out of the limelight now and nobody gives a shit about what he has to say. And his book's probably stupid. So he just says whatever garbage he has to say to sensationalize himself and sell some books. The former San Francisco 49ers quarterback added, those become spaces where it's like, how do I navigate this situation now? But it also has informed why I have my hair long today. Okay. Victim. Rick and Teresa Kaepernick are a couple from Wisconsin. CNN attempted to reach out to them for comment, but they did not immediately receive a response. In Colin in Black and White, a Netflix series revisiting Kaepernick's childhood from 2021, there's a scene depicting the moment the former NFL player's mother calls him a thug because they disapprove of his hair. The book, titled Colin Kaepernick Changed the Game, is a graphic novel memoir detailing his high school years before he entered the spotlight of professional sports. According to the Scholastic Publishing Group's press release, it was co-written with Eve Ewing. In the same interview, Kaepernick said he still has a desire to play football professionally. Yeah, good luck, buddy. He hasn't played in the NFL since 2016 after his refusal to stand for the national anthem ahead of games to protest police brutality and racial injustice while he was at San Francisco 49er, sparked controversy. Okay, so that's it. I mean, it's a pretty benign article. I got to give CNN some credit. I mean, it doesn't have a heck of a lot of spin in any way. I wouldn't even know that was a CNN article. So congratulations, CNN. You've done some centrist type reporting there. Good for you. We still hate you. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, he's a goof. I I don't see any reason to talk more about him. Nobody's commenting, so I'm not gonna. I'm sure I'll get comments about him uh, in the after video that I post after. Somebody that is in love with Kaepernick and will tell me why I'm a tool. Um, yeah, I think to out your parents like that, and he admits that they took the, like, if you read more into it, which I did before, it was probably a couple days ago. he doesn't say that his parents weren't good parents, and they were. And obviously, I mean, he's a professional. Well, he was a professional football player. Obviously, they did a good job. That's not easy to raise a child and put them into football practice, pay for all that shit. The guy is a CEO of some kind of food company of some sort. So he's obviously very busy. He's well to do, and you know, for him to say something like this about them, it's slanderous and stupid. You just keep your mouth shut. Whatever. Anyways, get a little heated about that. Okay, so uh, let me uh, let me find this last one I've got queued up. This is like I said, this last thing's hilarious. Um, okay, sorry. Let me get this set up here. Hopefully this plays without any issues. But I'll play it. It's only like a 2-minute clip, so I don't know where the joke I think comes in kind of at the 1:30 mark or something like that, where I really thought this was hilarious. But he makes a really good point. This Russell Brand I'm talking about makes a really good point, just in general of um, people's understanding of information, and then like the sort of the biases of when you're being given information, and then to try and um, disseminate that information critically in critical thinking, but also get rid of the noise. So I'm going to play this on my team, right? You know, virus started that studied the virus and was doing gain of function research on the virus. How could it not be? Where the real risks take place. I want to compliment. Nobody able to. I get to. That's hilarious. I love that. That just tickled me. That was such a great little scene there. Uh, yeah. He's so funny. So smart. To be honest, I didn't expect that out of Russell Brand. You watch some of his movies and you just think he's kind of I don't know, like a drug doing has been kind of thing. Maybe maybe funny, but you don't realize that he's a lot of that humor is very intelligent humor. Um, just for him to go into that little rant there, um, in just so quickly like that without any real, unless he rehearsed it, which I highly doubt. But if he didn't rehearse that, that was awesome. The timing on that, and he had Bill Maher into a good laugh on that too, right? So it's funny how we find the things that are so ridiculous in that regard the funniest. Obviously, everything he said has such a ring of truth to it that it's that's what makes it so absurd that we weren't looking there. Like, come on. Anyways, okay, so uh, I'll end that on there. In fact, I'll end the podcast there because that's basically all I've got, and we're at about the 51-minute mark. Um, again, if you enjoy our podcasts, our live shows, please hit the subscribe, become a member of our little community here, and get notifications. We every Friday, 7 o'clock, we're doing a live show unless we say we're not. Even if one of us isn't here, we're doing one. Or at least I am. If Tyler's not here, I'm not sure what he'll do if I'm not here. Or we'll have a guest, something like that. So, yeah, please comment as well. We respond to all the comments, so say whatever you like. I don't care if you agree with me, disagree with me. Just try and keep it smart. Sometimes we get some stupid comments, which is whatever. If you're dumb and you make a dumb comment, that's your right. But just if you disagree with us, just tell us why you disagree, and have let's have an intelligent debate on something. When you're in a live podcast like this, it's hard to not kind of shoot your mouth off a little, which is what I'll do, and because we're not really a lot of this stuff. I'll know what it is, but I don't know exactly what I'm going to say about it until I say it, and especially if I've got someone like Tyler to bounce it off of. So we get some things wrong sometimes, but we're open to hear other perspectives, and we encourage other perspectives. So again, catch us for the next podcast next Friday. Tyler will be back, and so it won't just be me. If you've been irritated the last 2 weeks with just me, I apologize. If not, thank you, and thank you for our recent subscribers. Please share this as well, and yeah, let's build a community over here. Okay. Um, as far as that goes, I'll bid you adieu and good night and happy St. Patrick's Day.